Okay, so we're going to do some more practice with our reciprocal trig functions. And it says at the top, the reciprocal of a fraction only interchanges the numerator and denominator. It does not change the sign of the fraction. Therefore, whenever sine theta, cosine theta, and tangent theta are positive or negative, the reciprocal trig functions will be positive and negative in the same quadrants. So in number 4, it says list the trig functions that are positive in each quadrant. So we'll start off with all students take calculus. And so A plus refers to all of them. And so we know that sine theta is positive, cosine theta is positive, tangent theta is positive, and then the reciprocal of sine theta would be cosecant theta, that's positive. Cosine theta, reciprocal would be secant theta, and that'll be positive. And the reciprocal of tangent is cotangent theta, which will also be positive. So they're all positive in quadrant 1. Okay. Over here, again, they're only asking for the positive one. So we know that sine theta is positive in quadrant 2, and therefore the reciprocal of sine theta, which is cosecant theta, will also be positive in quadrant 2. Okay. In here, down in quadrant 3, tangent theta is positive, and therefore the reciprocal of tangent theta, which is cotangent theta, will also be positive. All the others will be negative. In quadrant 4, cosine theta is positive, and its reciprocal, which is secant theta, will also be positive. All the other trig functions will be negative. All right. Let's take a look at number 5. It says determine whether the following are positive or negative. So we could take a little quick peek up there, but I'll show you guys how to do it from scratch in case you don't have that diagram listed out on the question you're working on, all right? So all students take calculus, and they want to know about in quadrant 2, what do we know about cotangent theta? So in quadrant 2, sine theta and its reciprocal, which is cosecant theta, those are positive, and therefore I always think if they're asking about cotangent theta, I think about its reciprocal tangent theta. And in quadrant 2, it would be negative, so cotangent theta would be negative. Okay. All right. In part B, we'll start over with a nice clean, all students take calculus. They're asking about quadrant 4, which we know cosine theta is positive. All right. They're asking about secant. So the secant, remember, goes with cosine. They're the reciprocals of each other. And so in quadrant 4, cosine theta is positive, and therefore secant theta would also be positive. Okay. All right. In part C, we'll start off with a nice clean, all students take calculus. This time they're asking about quadrant 3, which tangent theta is the only one that's positive. So they're asking about cosecant, which is the reciprocal of sine theta. And so in quadrant 3, sine theta would be negative, and therefore cosecant theta would also be negative. All right, let's take a look down here in number 6. They're saying that cotangent theta is less than 0. Remember, being less than 0 means that it's negative. Cosecant theta is greater than 0, and so being greater than 0 is being positive. In which quadrant does the terminal side of angle theta lie? So we'll go ahead and do all students take calculus. And remember, when they're asking about cotangent, we'll think about what its reciprocal is. So if we're thinking about where tangent theta is negative, so we can figure out where cotangent theta is negative, we know that that's not in quadrant 1 and it's not in quadrant 3 because that's where tangent theta is positive. So it's either happening in quadrant 2 or quadrant 4. All right, and we'll use the second one to narrow it down. They want to know where cosecant theta is positive, and so I'm going to think about its reciprocal, and reciprocal would be sine theta, where sine theta positive. Okay, and we know sine theta is positive in quadrant 2, so cosecant theta would also be positive in quadrant 2, and so we'll say quadrant 2 has to be where it happens. Okay. All right, number 7. So they're asking about secant theta being greater than 0. Greater than 0 is positive. And tangent theta being greater than 0, which also means positive. Okay. So we'll do a little all students take calculus. All right, guys, in this first one, they're asking about secant theta being positive. So we'll think about not secant, but its reciprocal, which is cosine. So where's cosine theta positive? Well, they're all positive here, and cosine theta is positive in here. Okay. Then they're also asking about tangent theta being positive, and tangent theta, guys, is positive here and here. And so you guys can see quadrant 1 is where it's happening, both of those things. Okay. Number 8, they're asking, guys, if cotangent theta is less than 0, which means negative, and secant theta is being greater than 0, which is positive, which of the following, then theta could be which of the following angles. All right, so instead of them giving me quadrants as my 4 choices, they're giving me an angle in each quadrant. So we'll just have to figure out, just like we did in the last one. All students take calculus. First one up, guys, they're asking where cotangent theta is negative. So we'll think about the reciprocal, which is tangent theta. Where is tangent theta negative? Well, not here or here. That's where tangent theta is positive. So here or here. Okay. And then they're saying secant theta is greater than 0 or positive. And so we'll think about not secant, but its reciprocal, which is cosine theta. Where's cosine theta positive? So cosine theta is positive down here, guys. And so that's quadrant 4. And the only fourth quadrant angle that we have is 310 degrees. Okay. Number 9. In number 9, guys, it says that the angle theta when drawn in standard position has its terminal ray in the second quadrant. If it is known that sine theta equals square root of 7 over 4, then determine the exact value of all 5 of the remaining trig functions. Ooh. All right, so the very first thing I do when they ask about all the trig functions, guys, is that I list all of them out, and I list them side by side with their reciprocal. So we're going to start off with cosine theta, then sine theta, then tangent theta. And then we're going to flip them all. All right, so the reciprocal of cosine theta is secant theta. Remember, S's and C's don't go together. So cosine begins with C, so it goes with the trig function that begins with an S. Okay. Sine theta goes with cosecant theta. And tangent theta goes with cotangent theta. All right. We can also do this if we want to take care of it. What happens in the second quadrant is that sine theta is positive. Okay. And so since sine theta is positive, its reciprocal would be positive, and everybody else will need a negative. Okay, so we got that taken care of, and now we're going to go back up for the exact value. And so since they gave us this information, remember sine is opposite over hypotenuse. In fact, we can go ahead and fill this one in. It's not one that we need to find because they gave it to us. But if we flip it, we end up with the reciprocal, except we're going to need to rationalize this one. And so we'll go ahead and say that cosecant theta equals 4 square root of 7 over 7. And we're going to box this one up because that was one that we didn't have before, and now we have it. Okay. All right. For the rest of them, we can go ahead and graph our triangle. So since we're in quadrant 2, and our opposite and our adjacent and our hypotenuse, and we have the square root of 7 being our opposite, we have 4 being our hypotenuse, and then we can go into a little a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Some of you probably don't even need to draw that diagram anymore, but sometimes it's helpful. So we'll go ahead and put square root of 7 in for A. And we'll put our hypotenuse, which is 4, in for C. And we end up with 7 plus b squared equals 16. If we take 7 away from 16, we'll end up with 9. And square root, we end up with 3 as our missing adjacent side. Okay. All right. We are now ready to go ahead and fill in our trig functions, guys. So remember, cosine theta is adjacent, which is 3. Over hypotenuse, which is 4. We'll box that one up. We have 2 out of the 5 that we had to find. Okay. Secant theta will be the easiest one because all we have to do is flip that one. If we flip 3/4, we get 4/3. And then obviously it's negative. Okay. Tangent theta is your opposite side, which is your square root of 7, over your adjacent side, which is 3. And we'll box that up. If we flip that and we put the 3 on top and the square root of 7 on the bottom, we get cotangent theta, but just like cosecant, we are going to have to rationalize our denominator. And we end up with cotangent theta equaling negative 3 square root of 7 over 7. And we have found all 5 missing trig functions. Okay, so hopefully that helps, guys. All right, I'll see you guys on the next day.